how far you're able to succeed, how deep the relationships you're able to build are, how happy you are, how good your mental health is, so many things, right? And really by doing this authenticity work, it's essentially shame work. It's essentially picking your shames off like scabs one by one by one. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Write with Chloe. I'm so excited to be here. So in the lead up to this shoot, I asked a bunch of my long-term students to send me in whatever burning questions they have that they wanted me to speak to in more detail. And so the next few episodes are going to do exactly that, address some of my long-term students' questions. So the first one that was sent in was by a student who said, "What the fuck is authenticity, Chloe? Like, you talk about this all the time, but can you break it down for us? Like, why is it important?" And she went on to say that she's done heaps of therapy and coaching programs, and she still feels like she can't grasp what authentic even means. And she said, so, can you unpack it for us or for people who haven't even started this work? Because often people don't know and she personally said she can't figure out why she's holding so much shame about pretending. So if you haven't been in my spaces, or even if you have, really, authenticity is the centerpiece of everything I do, everything. In some ways, I actually have 3 different businesses or branches of my business, right? I have Write with Chloe, which is helping people become a published author in 3 years instead of 25 and enjoy the process. I have my inner work branch, which is things we were not taught. It's all about emotional regulation, triggers, mindset, authenticity, and so on. And then I have business from the body, which is where I help people build online businesses after I had my first $60,000 month and then $47,500 launch and then $15,000 day, all within the first 2 years of starting my first business, Write with Chloe, right? So I do 3 different types of programs essentially and coaching. And on the surface, it can look like, how are these, what? How can you do so many things? But it's interesting because although I didn't initially, it wasn't like an intellectual thing. Like, I didn't intellectually decide to specialize in authenticity, right? It honestly kind of just happened. Like, I live my life from the body. I live my life from intuition, right? And so that often means that I'm making decisions without real intellectual understanding of why I'm making those decisions. Obviously, we want to differentiate when we're making a decision from trauma or fear or something else versus true intuition. And that's sort of a whole episode in itself, which I should probably do. But by and large, for me, intuition it's not only a safe thing to live by. For me, it's the safest thing to live by, because we are often told that intellect is the thing that's going to help us get where we want to go in life. But in my experience, it's just not true. And I don't even know why. But a lot of people say, oh, how do you have this life? Traveled 35 countries, you work 2 hours a day, have a 6-figure business, had all these pro Muay Thai fights, published author while you're still in your 20s, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, most of it is intuition, because I trained myself to hear my intuition, A, and then B, train myself to surrender into that intuition, right? And so for me, this is really deeply related to authenticity. I've never actually even thought about a definition of authenticity until this student asked me this question. But after she did, and I started thinking about this, one of the things that came to me as a possible definition, and I'm not saying this is the dictionary accurate definition of authenticity, I'm just saying this is how I think of authenticity, is that it's living from the body instead of the brain or the head, right? So let me give you an example so you can have a bit, so you can kind of relate, hopefully, and then everything else that I'm saying will make sense and not be as abstract. Have you ever like gone to a party or gone to a gathering with a bunch of people that like you sort of know, but you don't yet fully know or fully feel safe to just relax and be yourself around? Like you know that you like them, you think they like you, but you're not super sure because you've kind of only hung out a couple of times. You know, maybe it's like a new university program or like a party where a friend brought you or something like that, right? And you're in a circle and there's, 4 or 5 people having a conversation about a topic that you actually happen to find really damn interesting. But a couple of the people in the group are expressing opinions that aren't quite in line with yours. And you can feel this, like, not in a combative way at all, but in like a excited, like, oh, this is so fascinating way. You can feel something in your body wanting to express. Wanting to be like, oh, wow, that's so fascinating. I never thought of it in that way. For me, that subject works in this way, right? But you don't. Instead, your whole body starts to vibrate. Your brain steps in and your inner dialogue starts talking about what will happen, about how they might not like you, about how if you don't have the same opinion, that might lead to X scary event happening. And so instead you end up basically not even getting to enjoy the conversation because now you're just having a back and forth in your own head about whether it's worth speaking up and sharing your truth or holding it in. And by that stage, your like body is in a bit of contraction, your shoulders are raised. So compare that to you sitting around in your pajamas, maybe after a couple glasses of wine with your mum or your best friend who you've known for 20 years. And there's just no filter, like no filter. You could literally like show this human your vagina if you had to, like that's how close you are. And then she says something and it's not in line with your opinion. And so you pipe back straight away with your opinion and be like, oh, that's so fascinating. I actually see it this way. And your body remains completely calm. Maybe there's some excitement, but there's not a sense of fear. There's not a sense of agitation. There's not this like tension between will I express, will I not express? Like almost like you're trying to go forward and backwards at the same time. There's just like for me, I experience it as like a lightness in my body. Like my body feels like fluffy and light instead of like tense and heavy. That for me is the difference between, in a way, non-authenticity and true authenticity. It's like, is your body in a state of contraction and heaviness like mud? Or is your body open and fluffy and light, right? That for me is like how I start to differentiate being authentic and when I'm not, right? Now, obviously there's another layer here, where you can actually be speaking up and sharing something that is super authentic and your body is still in a bit of contraction because there's shame or fear or all that kind of thing, right? But even as you do it, there's a part of you that knows almost that it's good for you and that you're choosing to step into vulnerability and you're choosing honesty, right? So that's kind of how it plays out for me. But, I'm just trying to think like of some other situations to speak about because, yeah, this has been a long standing narrative my whole life, to be honest. From a really young age, I've always just felt like people didn't like me, like I didn't fit in, like I was weird. I mean, I am weird, but I love that about myself now. But for a long time, I didn't, right? And so grappling with this almost constant sense of not fitting in, it gave me no choice but to start doing authenticity work from a really young age. So I mean, trauma also helps kick you in that direction. But I probably started training myself in authenticity from the age of like 22, 23. And one of the first ways that I did this was to set a reminder to go off on my phone every hour saying, I am a liar. I was doing shadow work at the time. And yeah, as part of that, I wanted to kind of give my brain permission. Like, I didn't think of myself as a dishonest person. I still don't think of myself as a dishonest person, right? And yet, you know, when you do shadow work, you take the things that are definitely not true about yourself and then you look at them and see if they're actually true. And one of the things that I said I liked about myself was that I was authentic and honest. And so, okay, let's reverse it and let's see if that's actually true. And so the way that I did that is I set this, hourly reminder saying, I am a liar, to go off on my phone every hour. And the first couple of times it went off, didn't really do much. But after a couple of days, it started to become ingrained into the lens through which I was seeing the world. And suddenly every tiny instance of even slight, probably too far to be honest, inauthenticity came up or happened, suddenly my brain could see it, right? Because just because your brain is telling you that you're honest or genuinely authentic, it doesn't actually mean it's true, right? I mean, our brains literally lie to us all day, every day, like nonstop. Which is why I would prefer to live from intuition. Like, intuition doesn't lie, your brain does. But anyway, back to the I am a liar thing. So suddenly I could just see all of these situations where I was like kind of lying. They weren't big lies at all. They were just like, you know, someone offering me a space to be vulnerable and me not taking it, even though I wanted to, right? It's a different thing if you don't want to take it. Definitely respect that. I wanted to. I just didn't, I don't know, I was terrified to take it, right? In these small instances. Even going for a massage and then speaking up about how I wanted the massage done. Having conversations with my then boyfriend. Like, that's another whole episode. Like, yeah. So many of us are petrified of authenticity, I think. And so, yeah, for me, it really took this very conscious process of training myself to be authentic. And it's funny to me how many people say that I'm authentic, like out of my students and in my business, because I'm so hyper aware of where I'm not being authentic. And particularly if I'm in a situation where I don't fully feel like I belong, it's almost like I regress and I'm right back to being like a teenager. And it's not that I'm ever outwardly lying to people in like a dramatic way necessarily, but it's like I'll hide certain parts of my personality, or I might not tell the full truth of my actual music taste in case they might judge me. And it's like these small little lies that really like erode with time your sense of self. And I have found, someone asked me once, like, what do you do for self-love work? Like, you're so confident. I don't do any self-love work. I've never done any self-love work, but I've done a shit ton of authenticity work. And what I've noticed for myself is that my level of self-love is directly correlated to the level of authenticity work that I have done. The more authenticity work I do, i.e. the more I allow myself to be seen and witnessed by others, the more I'm able to fall in love with and respect myself as an automatic byproduct without even trying to love myself. I mean, sometimes I do look in the mirror and tell myself I'm so proud of myself, but that's about it. So I guess to finish up, it might be worth mentioning a little bit about why. Like, why bother? Why do this authenticity work? Shame is heavy. Shame is really fucking heavy. And if you've never actually even taken a part of the shackles of shame off, you're possibly not even aware of how much lighter you can feel when you start to remove it. But it makes a big difference to everything in your life. How far you're able to succeed, how deep the relationships you're able to build are, how happy you are, how good your mental health is, so many things, right? And really by doing this authenticity work, it's essentially shame work. It's essentially picking your shames off like scabs one by one by one. Another reason why for me this is so important is I want to live in my body. I feel best. I feel most alive. I feel most trusting of the universe when I'm living in my body. And when you're not living from an authentic place, you're living from your head, because the level of self-monitoring that takes requires your brain to be constantly activated. And so as a third reason, it just drains your energy. What's that word? Siphoning? I don't know how to say it. Siphoning, like draining in bulk. Inauthenticity it does that to your energy. So like if you feel like you don't have energy, for example, I would look at your authenticity levels. Like for example, I know being around my boyfriend takes almost zero energy for me. And because I'm so comfortable in front of him, like I would literally let him see me do anything except for take a shit. Like I'm not even kidding. Like that man has seen me do everything except for take a shit. And so being in his presence, it doesn't drain me, as opposed to being around, living your life without letting yourself be authentic. It's this constant draining of energy, essentially, because the mental monitoring that is required to sustain that is so big. It puts your body in a state of contraction, not living in authenticity. So again, your body can feel 10 kilos heavier, right? As opposed to that state of openness. And yeah, I think it's worth just picturing, like, do you want to live the rest of your life carrying this extra 10 kilos of mud armor around your body? Because until you start to do authenticity and visibility work, that's essentially what you're doing. And for me, writing is one of the best ways, if not the best way. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but to start to do authenticity work. Like, I have a membership called Write from the Heart, and we meet online every Wednesday, and we get together and we journal, and then we just share what's coming up in our inner world and talk through stuff and blah, 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 and learn how to write from the body instead of the head. And really that whole program is training in visibility, or training in learning to be authentic on the page. Because once you learn how to be authentic on the page, it starts to automatically trickle out into your life, and vice versa. Once you train yourself to be authentic off the page, it starts to trickle onto the page also. Yeah. So I think that's about all I have to say about authenticity, but I'm sure I will have more ideas later. This is a huge topic. It's just not one that I've ever sort of intellectually thought through before, because I've done it all from intuition. So I will probably at some point record another episode, maybe with someone else. That'd be fun, actually. But I think that's a good start. And yeah, if you want to get started on this, like I said, you can join my membership Right from the Heart. If you use the code Chloe at checkout, the link's below, you can get 1 week for free. So you might as well just come along, try it out for a week. You can leave if it's not your thing either. But that's a perfect place to start doing some authenticity work, really. I hope that helps. And if this podcast was useful, I would love to hear from you. Send me a DM and let me know how it changed your life, to be dramatic. Or if it was useful, I would love it if you could share this with a family member, a friend, a partner, or even share it on your Instagram story and tag me so I can reshare you. Thanks for listening as always, and it is my deepest honor to have you here. Hey guys, so many people come to me after having written a first draft but end up having to throw out everything they've written because there's no depth or psychological nuance in the work. My program, Write from the Body, Edit from the Head, is a 5-month journey to teach you everything you need to know right from the beginning all the way through to finishing a full first draft. It's broken into 2 sections. First, I teach you how to write from the body or soul or intuition, which is how we get that beautiful complexity, nuance, and depth on the page. And then I teach you my 3-step editing process that if you do on repeat to every piece of your work will clean up 90% of all issues I see with people's writings. So it's a 5-month program. It's a small group container, so you get a lot of individualized support, and then you've got accountability to stay consistent for that whole time and finish a first draft. If you would like to know more information about joining, you can send me a message on Instagram and let's have a chat.